So, on Twitter today, Mad Max, the legend he is, uh, posted a link to an article about the UCMCA, apparently it's called, the U.S.-Mexico-Canada Agreement. This is the replacement for the NAFTA agreement, and part of it is Canada will loosen their supply management on dairy. So, we'll note here, it's only by 3.6%. So 3.6% of our market will become, or foreigners will have access to. It's hardly anything. This is a very small amount. So let's just read the article here because it's pretty wild. The so-called U.S.-Mexico-Canada agreement will widen foreign access to the domestic dairy market by about 3.6%. According to analysts, higher than the 3.25% that was conceded by Canada under the Trans-Pacific Partnership, TPP. In 2015, former Prime Minister Stephen Harper offered as much as $4.3 billion compensate dairy and poultry producers for TPP, prompting questions over the cost of the latest round of payouts. This number should be zero. To be fair, a 3.6 or 3.25% increase in foreign access to the Canadian dairy market is not very much. This is a totally absorbable cost for these firms that have been benefiting from very inflated dairy prices due to the lack of competition from foreign markets. So I don't see why they should be getting anything, let alone $4.3 billion. Wow, that's a lot of money. You can bet the ask is going to be significant here, said Martha Hall Findlay, a chief executive officer of the Western Canadian Foundation in Calgary. The foundation has long called for the scrapping of Canada's supply-managed dairy industry, which effectively controls markets through production quotas, fixed pricing, and heavy tariffs on imports ranging between 246 and 300%. So you cannot compete through that. It's almost impossible. I don't know how you could possibly charge low enough with a 300% tariff on your goods. How could you ever compete? These piecemeal compensations could end up being far, far more than what it would actually cost to dismantle supply management in its entirety. Agreed. They shouldn't really be getting anything. It's like, you, person who has been stealing money from Canadians, more or less, for the last 20 years, we're going to take away your ability to steal money from Canadians, but we're going to compensate you for it. Okay. Foreign Affairs Minister Chrystia Freeland on Monday did not specify how much money would be paid out to embattled dairy producers, but told reporters that compensations were the right thing to do. Ottawa has not yet detailed precisely how much compensation would be given out to farmers under TPP. I could see if they were completely dismantling it altogether that this would make sense. But for a 3.6 increase in foreign competition, I mean, why would they need compensation for that? Yes, they've presumably overinvested a little bit, but that's how it works in a pseudo-socialist economy. The government's going to change stuff all the time. You can't really change that. You can't expect everything to stay exactly the same. And just because you've been making dealings with the government so far, I don't think it's a reasonable expectation that you should continue having this preferable treatment. And again, if it were all going away overnight, okay, fair enough, you can compensate them for that, but it's only a slight little drawback or peel back of the system. It's still in place. There's still dairy cartels in Canada that are going to exist for I don't know how long. So the idea that they should be compensated for this, and in the amount of $4.3 billion, which is a pretty insane number, and that was from Harper, I'm guessing it's going to be a lot more from the Liberals. I wouldn't be surprised if it went up to $6 billion or something like that. They're much more happy to spend public money than Harper was. Ottawa joined the USMCA Saturday evening, just hours before a U.S.-imposed deadline. The deal, if completed, would put an end to over a year of negotiations to modernize the North American Free Trade Agreement, first signed in the early 1990s. I thought it was older than that, but it's not very long at all. Analysts say the deal includes some major concessions for producers. Yes, the people who are already had an unfair advantage over others are going to have to give up a small amount of their unfair advantage. How terrible. Oh, I feel so bad for them. It's a hard hit, said Al Musin, lead researcher at the Ontario-based Agri-Food Economic Systems. Musel said the most striking concession is the elimination of Class 7 milk products, including high-protein products like milk powder and baby formulas, which were long a sticking point in Canadian-U.S. trade negotiations. The classification was introduced in March 2017 as a way for Canadian producers to keep input costs artificially low. I don't really know anything about that, but sounds like socialism to me. The deal also slaps a levy on any Canadian exports of Class 7 milk products over a certain threshold, effectively limiting companies' access to foreign markets. Yeah, I mean, I would prefer that not be part of this, and I think that if we just allowed the complete abolition of supply management, I'm guessing America and other foreign markets would probably be willing to get rid of their tariffs as well. This has always been the problem with tariffs. It's like, yeah, you can stop Chinese steel from coming into your country, but like, they're just going to stop buying stuff from you. They're just going to do the same thing that you did to them, and now both countries are worse off. I don't know if Trump gets this either, so I'm not just blaming Trudeau here, but I think that most people don't seem to understand this. The best thing for your economy, specifically the best thing for your citizens, is to have no tariffs on anyone. That means that more people here can import the goods they need to produce whatever they're making, or maybe they just get stuff for cheap, and overall real incomes will go up for Canadians. If someone wants to tariff Canadian goods, that's bad for them. They don't get stuff that is cheaper. I don't see why we shouldn't be taking other products from them if it's cheaper for us. It's like they still have to spend the money in Canada more or less, or they have to trade it to a bank to spend it. At which point they're at a loss anyway, so they're less likely to do this. Anyway. Hal Findlay said the Class 7 concessions combined with wider access to the dairy market for U.S. firms will restrict the ability of Canadian firms to compete globally. If that's true, then they were being artificially held up anyway, so they're not able to compete, and that would mean they shouldn't be using taxpayer dollars to be made competitive. It's a win for the Americans, she says. We're opening more of our domestic market, but we're doing nothing to enhance our ability to expand into other global markets. At some point, this does not make sense for Canada. Well, that's fair. I would prefer that other countries not tariff Canadians, but at the same time, I don't think that it's right to tax Canadians to pay for your own retaliatory tariffs. That said, this is basically how this works. The tariffs are basically always answered with other tariffs. Kind of just how it goes. And I understand that. I think that there are use for tariffs, and the use is to try to get other countries to limit their tariffs. But just to say, oh, tariffing this because they tariffed us, and that's going to be good for us in the long run is not true. The USMCA has prompted widespread calls for compensation for dairy farmers. Of course they have, both from producers and conservative-leaning politicians. Yeah, well, this is how you know the conservative-leaning politicians aren't really conservatives. If our farmers are being abandoned because of one-sided concessions from the federal government, they must take immediate action to support the families and livelihoods that are now at risk, Ontario Premier Doug Ford said on Twitter Monday. Yeah. Yeah, it seems like there's hope, and then Doug Ford says some stupid shit like, pay the people who have been benefiting from an unfair system for the past, I don't actually know how long. Probably for a while. Supply management has caused a rift inside conservative ranks in Ottawa. Conservative leader Andrew Scheer loves it. He definitely is a big fan of supply management. For his part, has been supportive of supply management after securing the support of dairy farmers in his leadership bid. Exactly. A move seen by some as fundamentally anti-free market. Maxime Bernier, here he is, split from the party last month to launch his own party, calling the Conservatives intellectually and morally corrupt, in part because of its support for dairy protections, among other things. Pierre Lampron, I'm not sure how to say that one, president of Dairy Farmers of Canada, had long called on Ottawa to tread carefully in dairy concessions under NAFTA talks. The group criticized the deal Monday. Yeah, oh, shocker, the dairy farmers are criticizing the deal. No one saw that coming. We failed to see how this deal can be good for the 220,000 Canadian families that depend on dairy for their livelihood, it said in a statement. Dairy analyst Musel said dairy producers feel they have become the fall guy in the string of trade deals including TPP and the Comprehensive Economic Trade Agreement, CETA, which further opened up Canada's cheese market to European farms. I think the producers feel like they're being beat up pretty bad, Musel said. The first protection for the Canadian dairy industry were 1970s when this started. Additional protections for chicken, eggs, turkey, and other products were phased in over the following decade. So here we see the crybabies are doing what they do best. They say, "Oh, Canadians, we're basically going to tax you. We're going to make you pay more for our products, and in return, we're going to give you nothing." Oh, but 220,000 people work for us. Well, those 220,000 people are living off the paycheck of less fortunate people. Basically, when you have a tax like this, a tariff, you need to consider that there's only so much milk an individual can drink. So if there's a family of 4, let's say they go through a gallon a week. A family of 4 that is low income probably isn't going to drink any less milk than a family of 4 that's higher income. They're actually probably going to drink more milk. Seems to me to be drunk more by lower income families, but I don't know. That's just pure conjecture. So don't take that with or don't quote me on that one. But it seems to me this is something that I've just kind of noticed. Again, it could be completely false, but even if it doesn't, say they drink milk at equal rates. A human being in Canada drinks a quarter quart of milk a week. Who is it that is hurt more by having to pay more for the milk? Is it the rich people who spend a very small proportion of their income on milk? Or is it the poorer people who spend possibly 10 times the proportion of their income on milk? If you're paying 0.5% on milk versus 2% of your income on milk, who is hurt more by an artificially high price of milk? Well, of course, it's the lower income people. That's obvious. So we have people here who are taking advantage, especially of the lower income families of Canada, and at the same time crying that 220,000 people might be put at risk by this. Okay, well, here's the deal. If you cannot compete with foreign markets, then you're doing a shit job. If you cannot compete with smaller producers in Canada, you're doing a shit job, and you do not deserve a preferential treatment from the government of Canada just because you are doing a bad job. Okay? I'm sure Canadian farmers could compete with other farmers around the world. I'm sure that this is possible. There's no reason that Canadian farmers shouldn't be able to. If you've ever lived in Canada, you'll know there's fucking cows everywhere. There are so many cows here. Just all over the place. If you don't think that these farmers have the ability to compete with other farmers, then you think that they're stupid. There's really no other reason. What, is it because it's cold? It's cold in other places too. Sorry to say, that's just how it is. Like, yeah, maybe you have to pay more for heating costs. Okay. Well, maybe then, if that's the case and you can't compete, then why are we putting our society's resources into the production of milk? Why don't we just let other places produce milk for us? We can buy their milk. We'll do things we're better at. Like, pulling oil out of the ground and actually building a pipeline to ship it to other markets than just the U.S. Now, that would be a crazy suggestion. That's just a stupid thing. Why would we stop selling our oil at half price? That's nuts. Why would we do that? Instead, we should take money from people in Canada, especially the lowest income people, and give it to milk farmers who are, despite what they'd like you to believe, not the average guy. You don't see very many alternative sources of milk in Canada, especially not in the grocery stores. You got your Dairyland, you got your Lucerne, you got maybe a little bit of Beatrice, but that's pretty rare. I think that might actually be a foreign company, but there's really not much. And so what we've got now is, this silly cartel, and they're complaining that a small little percentage of their cartel is being disformed while they're being handsomely paid at the same time. It is beyond ridiculous These people do not care about Canadians, and I guess they probably shouldn't as far as the individuals are concerned. They should be responding to their own incentives, but at the same time, they're going to cry and whine and complain that they're being treated unfairly after they've been treating Canadians unfairly since 1970. It is the same with it's the same with eggs, cheese, chicken, turkey, apparently. We've got this bullshit all over the place. Max is right. We should be abolishing the thing entirely. It's bad for Canadians, and it's good. It's bad for the Canadians in general, especially low-income Canadians, and it's good for a very small percentage of very high-income Canadians. That's it. It's only good for milk producers. Those are the only people this is good for. And I'll say it again: if they cannot compete without the help from the government, then they are not good enough to be in this market. They should stop being. They should just stop trying to compete if they're unable to. Now, I happen to think they are able to compete, that they're just being lazy. Well, hope that this made some sense to you. If not, leave me an angry comment. I will respond to all of them. Thanks for your time. Have a good day.